This is going to be my week 12 screencast for ATM 101 Weather and Climate of Alaska. My name is Blade Brisky. We're going to start off looking at the weather for Alaska for the week of January 26th. We're going to start out on Tuesday's weather, what that looked like. As you can see on here, we have a couple of low pressure areas throughout Alaska. One here on the western part of the Aleutian Islands, one off here, and another one off East Alaska. So in here, you can see that the pressure numbers vary from 964 to 988. As you can see here, there is fog throughout Alaska. It is affecting us here somewhat in Fairbanks and down here, mostly in the interior of Alaska though. We do have snow coming from the western part of Alaska, going towards about the interior. You can see down here we have another low pressure system around 946 that is pushing up northward from, as you can see here, some winds coming up. In the interior of Alaska though, for today, for that day on Tuesday, it was pretty congested. We got a lot of cloud cover, fog, covering most of the interior of Alaska there. Now we're going to keep moving on. Look at Wednesday's weather. You can see here we had that low pressure system that was in the south. It did finally push up here. It lowered a little bit to 956. As you can see here, we have another low pressure system that it was further out in the Aleutian Islands. It's now pushing more westward, eastward. And we have still that fog and cloud cover covering majority of Alaska. We still have that blowing snow. We do actually have snow on the northern and northwestern parts of Alaska, and as well down here in the southern part of Alaska. The snow is being pushed around, as you can see here. We have these low pressure systems. They're continually being forced northward. As you can see, these low pressure systems predicting that they're going to come into here, and it's actually going to go into the state and get off the coastal areas. And we're going to keep moving on to Thursday's weather. As you can see here, those low pressures that were southern part of Alaska, they're continually being pushed northward. As you can see here, it's a little bit more clear. The fog has been getting pushed out further and further. It's kind of on the coast of Alaska now. You can see here we have our freezing precipitation. We have winds blowing up here. Cloud cover still kind of congested the interior part of Alaska here, affecting people in Fairbanks. And we have another low pressure over here, 981 off the Aleutian Change, that's been kind of staying there. It's been varying back and forth. As you can see here, you're seeing more winds being pushed eastward. And the snowfall is still happening on the northern tips of Alaska. And the snow that was in the southern part of Alaska seems to be moving west towards the Aleutian Islands. It looks like you have some showers on the northern part and the Aleutian Island parts of Alaska. We're going to move on to Friday's weather. And here in Alaska, it cleared up quite a bit. Not very much cloud cover, very minimal. Those low pressure systems, though, they're a lot more on Fridays and varying in numbers as well. We have some low pressures here. They're being pushed. As you can see here, they're getting this little pocket of winds pushing eastward. It's going to force these low pressure systems to keep moving. You can see here we have showers on the outside of Alaska here, as well as we do still have some snow pretty consistently up here in the north part of Alaska. And we have now on Friday's weather, we have snow more towards on the border of Canada and Alaska there. And we have these low pressure systems, they're still hanging around here. And we move on to Saturday's weather. And now you can see that these low pressures eventually turn to a high pressure system that's at 1016. Some of these low pressures have disappeared, and they continue to migrate around Alaska. We have some showers over here. We have snow continuously throughout the northern part of Alaska. And we have this wind front coming eastward. It's forcing these low pressure systems to stay kind of more towards the interior of Alaska. So we're going to look at Sunday's weather. The high pressure from that wind earlier on Saturday, you see it's being forced that way. You can see here that force of wind is continually being forced eastward, and it's actually pushing that high pressure system more towards Canada, actually in Canada there. We have some fog up here in the northern area, but with that, it seems with that change with wind that's forcing that high pressure system, there's not as much snow. As you can see, that there's very minimal, maybe right here on the coast, but it's kind of disintegrated or dissipated from the northern part of Alaska. And that's going to be our looking at our weather forecast for that week. Now we're going to take a look at the different temperatures for Sandpoint, Bethel, Nome, and Fairbanks. Just the kind of different observation temperatures and pressure wise. Our first one's going to be Sandpoint here. As you can see, this one's actually pretty consistent. It only kind of varied within maybe 10 degrees throughout the whole week. So it didn't fluctuate that much. And from our observation this week, Sandpoint did end up being the most stable one out of all the towns and cities that we observed for that week. As you can see here, temperatures kind of started out on Wednesday around 35 to 40 degrees. And with those low pressures, it did go down a little bit. Once that high pressure did actually come in and seemed to raise the temperature actually when the high pressure system was there. And then when that high pressure system kind of was dissipating from Alaska going to Canada, the temperatures kind of leveled back out. So it seems like you can correlate the high pressure systems with possible higher temperatures as well. And the same thing we go with lower pressures seem to produce lower temperatures. Now we're going to keep moving on. We're going to look at Bethel. This one varied a little bit more compared to Sandpoint. This started around 25 to 30 degrees, stayed pretty stable, and then you see these low pressure systems eventually turn into high pressure, which made the temperature rise like we saw earlier in Sandpoint's observations. And while the high pressure system dissipated, the temperature went lowered as well. It's kind of cool. You can predict if there's a high pressure system, you can kind of expect that higher temperature is going to come with that. Same thing they do with low pressure, and there's going to be lower temperatures as a result. Now we're going to look at Nome now. Nome varied a little bit more, actually varied like whole 10 to 35 degrees. Same thing to go along with the week. Start out with low pressures. Low pressures around Friday, it turned into that high pressure, which spiked the temperature up. And yeah, the temperature kind of dissipated, and if we kept looking at the forecast, I'm guessing that when that high pressure disappeared, the temperature would actually lower back down. Now we'll look at a final city, which is going to be Fairbanks. Now Fairbanks varied the most out of all the cities. I'm pretty sure it's because of that continental temperature, or like more in the interior, so it seems like we fluctuate more compared to the coastal cities, the maritime ones. Right here, same thing, like we've seen in all of them. We started out pretty easy in this one, then the low pressures kept going, and when we got the high pressure though, it seemed like with Fairbanks, because it's interior, it actually stayed pretty stable, or somewhat stable, but it did spike back up, and then it kind of leveled back out when that high pressure went away. That's our look at our temperatures for that week. Now we want to look at the worksheet for this week, week 12. These are different data that we had to do. There's just kind of a good way to look at different temperatures using persistence forecasts, climatology forecasts. You kind of get a different range of accuracy. And if we look actually here we go. So this says this was relating to the persistent and climatology one. You actually had to do calculations to see which ones were the most accurate. And from my calculations, the Sandpoint areas was the most accurate. Actually, I only had one fail. But you can see here they're all within a certain range. Now some of these cities like Fairbanks and Bethel, they ranged very frequently, so that's why they had a lot of fails compared to the Sandpoint area. And you can just kind of expect that with certain. And this is kind of cool because this shows you like kind of which way is a better way to predict the forecast, which way gets you like the most accurate readings. It seems like the persistent one was used. It seems to be more accurate compared to the climatology one. And that is going to be my week 12 screencast. If you have any questions, feel free to message me. Thank you.